The subway rattled through the tunnel like a metal beast, and Ruby Santos gripped the cold pole with calloused hands. Her reflection stared back from the dark window-tired brown eyes. Hair pulled into a practical bun, and a face that had forgotten how to look young. She was 26 but felt 50. 3 jobs would do that to a person. Tonight would be her 4th job. If she lasted, Ruby pulled out her phone and checked the text from her younger sibling, Jamie. "Good luck tonight. Don't let the vampire boss scare you away like the others." 3 emoji hearts followed. Ruby smiled despite her exhaustion. Jamie always knew how to lighten the weight she carried. The medical bills sat in her backpack like stones. Stage 3 lymphoma didn't care about payment plans or desperate sisters working themselves to dust. The experimental treatment Jamie needed cost more than Ruby made in a year. But Obsidian Heights paid triple the normal rate for bartenders. There had to be a reason. Whispers in the dark. Ruby emerged from the subway into downtown Seattle's gleaming night. Obsidian Heights rose 40 stories above the financial district, its rooftop glowing with purple and blue lights that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Even from street level, she could feel its presence: elegant, dangerous, magnetic. She wasn't the only one staring up at it. A woman in a cocktail dress stood nearby, mascara streaked down her cheeks, heels dangling from her hand. "Don't work there," the woman said suddenly, noticing Ruby's upward gaze. "Don't make my mistake." Ruby hesitated. "What happened?" "He happens." The woman's voice cracked. "Every night at midnight, the lights change, the music stops, and he becomes something else. Something broken and terrifying." She grabbed Ruby's arm with surprising strength. "No one lasts more than one night. The money isn't worth your sanity." Before Ruby could respond, the woman hurried away into the rain that had just begun to fall. Ruby stood there for a moment, rain speckling her jacket, then looked back up at the glowing tower. She thought of Jamie's pale face in the hospital bed. She thought of the stack of bills that grew taller every week. She thought of her mother's last words before she died: "Take care of each other." Ruby walked toward the entrance. The fortress of glass. The elevator ride to the 40th floor felt like ascending into another world. Smooth jazz played softly, and the walls were mirrored panels that reflected Ruby's nervous face 100 times. She straightened her collar and practiced her smile. She'd worked in dive bars and hotel lounges, but never anywhere like this. The doors opened to reveal a space that stole her breath. Obsidian Heights was built entirely of black glass and chrome, with geometric patterns carved into every surface. Purple and blue lights shifted slowly across the ceiling like an aurora borealis. The bar itself was a massive slab of polished obsidian, and behind it, bottles glowed on illuminated shelves like jewels in a dragon's hoard. But it was the silence that struck her most. Despite the dozen customers scattered across leather couches and high-top tables, the space felt muted, as if sound itself was being swallowed by the walls. "You must be Ruby." A woman with silver hair and sharp eyes approached, extending her hand. "I'm Natasha Reeves, head bartender. I'm impressed you showed up." "Why wouldn't I?" Natasha's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Because the last 3 people hired for your position ran out crying before their first shift ended, and the one before that quit via text from the parking garage." Ruby set down her backpack. "I don't scare easily. That's what they all say." Natasha gestured toward the bar. "Let me show you the station. And let me explain the rules." The Twilight protocols. Natasha walked Ruby through the setup. Other staff members watched with poorly concealed curiosity. A young bartender with nervous hands whispered to a server in a crisp black uniform. A manager with slicked back hair and cold eyes studied Ruby from across the room. Grant Walsh. According to his name tag, standard bar operations until midnight, Natasha explained, checking bottles and wiping down surfaces. Premium cocktails, high-end clientele, fast pace. You seem capable enough for that part? And after midnight, Natasha's expression hardened. After midnight, everything changes. We call it the Twilight Protocol. The owner, Devon Pierce, has very specific requirements. She began counting on her fingers. Lights must be dimmed to exactly 40%. Music switches to instrumental only. No vocals. No sudden movements. No loud noises. No direct eye contact with Devon unless he speaks to you first. No standing in his line of sight when he's on the balcony. Ruby frowned. That's oddly specific. Survival, Natasha said flatly. Devon has what the staff calls episodes, panic attacks, sensory overload, something like that. No one really knows the details. But when he's triggered, things get intense. People get fired for sneezing too loud. One server got dismissed for laughing during Twilight Protocol. That sounds illegal. Rich people don't play by normal rules. Natasha moved closer, voice dropping. Look, I don't know why you need this job so badly that you're willing to risk it, but I'm giving you fair warning. Devon Pierce is not a normal boss. He's brilliant, wealthy, and completely in control of everything here. Except himself. Ruby absorbed this information while her hands automatically began organizing her bar tools. Has anyone ever helped him? During an episode? Natasha blinked, surprised by the question. Help him. Ruby, people run from him. That's the smart move. Running isn't always the smart move, Ruby said quietly. Sometimes it just makes things worse. Before Natasha could respond, the atmosphere in the room shifted like air pressure dropping before a storm. Conversation ceased. Staff members straightened their postures. Even the ice and glasses seemed to stop slink. The man behind the legend, Devon Pierce, stepped out from a private elevator at the far end of the bar. He was tall and lean, moving with the controlled precision of someone who calculated every step. His black suit was perfectly tailored, his dark hair swept back from a face that was handsome in a severe, almost cruel way. But it was his eyes that captured Ruby's attention, deep brown, almost black, burning with an intensity that seemed to look through people rather than at them. He walked slowly through the space, inspecting details. He adjusted a crooked coaster. He shifted a chair 2 inches to the left. He ran his finger along the bar's edge, checking for dust. Not a single staff member spoke. Then his gaze found Ruby. For 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Devon Pierce stared at the new bartender standing behind his Obsidian bar. His expression revealed nothing, no welcome, no hostility, just a cold assessment that made Ruby feel like she was being X-rayed. She didn't look away. She'd spent too many years in hospital rooms and welfare offices, learning that fear only made powerful people crueler. She met his gaze calmly, respectfully, but without submission. Something flickered in Devon's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or curiosity. He moved on without speaking, continuing his inspection as if she didn't exist. Natasha exhaled slowly beside her. Well, you just broke the first rule and somehow didn't get fired. That's either very good luck or very bad luck. We'll find out which at midnight. Ruby's heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands remained steady as she returned to organizing bottles. She'd made it through the first test. 6 more hours until midnight. 6 more hours until she discovered whether the legends were true. The saboteur. Watchies across the room. Grant Walsh observed the interaction with narrowed eyes and a thin smile. He'd been waiting for an opportunity like this. New. Naive employee who didn't understand the minefield she'd just entered. Someone he could use to hurt Devon the way Devon had hurt him. 2 years ago, Grant had managed one of Devon's other properties. He'd cut corners, ignored safety protocols, and looked the other way when staff engaged in risky behavior. When tragedy struck and someone died, Devon had fired him publicly and destroyed his reputation throughout the industry. Grant blamed Devon for everything he'd lost: his career, status, his identity. Getting rehired through a contractor loophole was his chance for revenge. And this new bartender, with her clear eyes and obvious desperation, would be the perfect weapon. All he had to do was make sure she broke the right rules at the right time. Grant pulled out his phone and began making notes. Midnight was coming. And with it, his opportunity to watch Devon Pierce finally lose control in front of witnesses who mattered. Ruby Santos had no idea she'd just walked into a war she didn't understand, but she would learn soon enough. The hours before, midnight moved like honey, slow, thick, deceptively sweet. Ruby learned the rhythm of Obsidian Heights quickly. The customers were wealthy tech executives, lawyers celebrating wins, and young entrepreneurs who ordered bottles that cost more than her monthly rent. She mixed drinks with practiced efficiency, her hands moving through motions she could perform in her sleep. But she wasn't sleeping. She was watching. She watched Devon Pierce move through the space like a ghost, present but untouchable. She watched how staff members tensed when he passed, how conversations died mid-sentence when his shadow fell across a table. She watched him pause at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seattle's glittering sprawl, his reflection haunted in the glass. Most of all, she watched Grant Walsh watching her. The former manager had positioned himself near the server station, close enough to interfere without being obvious about it. He'd already accidentally bumped her twice, spilled garnish containers she'd organized, and given her conflicting instructions that contradicted Natasha's training. Ruby said nothing. She'd dealt with bullies before. They fed on reactions. At 11:30, regular customer approached the bar, Mr. Chen, according to the reservation list. He was in his 60s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. He ordered a Manhattan, then watched Ruby work. "You're new," he observed. "First night. Brave." He accepted the drink and took a slow sip. Perfect ratios. "You've done this before. Different bars? Same principles." Mr. Chen studied her curiously. Devon doesn't usually hire experienced bartenders anymore. He prefers people he can train exactly to his specifications. "What made him choose you?" Ruby wiped down the counter. "I needed the job. He needed someone who wouldn't quit." "Everyone quits here, my dear. It's only a question of when." But there was something approving in his tone. "Though perhaps you're different. You don't look at him with fear. That's unusual." Before Ruby could respond, the lights dimmed subtly. The music shifted from contemporary jazz to a soft instrumental piece with no percussion. The temperature seemed to drop 5 degrees. Twilight. Protocol had begun. The transformation, Ruby felt it before she saw it, the change in Devon Pierce's posture. The way his breathing pattern altered, the sudden rigidity in his shoulders. He stood near the balcony doors, one hand gripping the railing with white-knuckled intensity. His eyes had gone distant, focused on something only he could see. Staff members moved like they were underwater, their gestures slow and exaggerated in their carefulness. No one spoke above a whisper. A server carrying glasses walked on her toes to avoid the click of heels on marble. Grant appeared beside Ruby's station, his voice low and falsely concerned. "Watch carefully now. This is where things get interesting." His smile was poisonous. Devon had a business partner years ago. They built this empire together. Then one night, right here in this bar during a grand opening party, his partner had a heart attack triggered by a drug interaction no one knew about. Devon was on stage giving a speech when it happened. Lights, camera, music, celebration, and his partner dying in the crowd while everyone danced. Ruby's hand stilled on the shaker she'd been cleaning. "He blames himself," Grant continued, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "The loud music, the flashing lights, the chaos. He thinks if he'd noticed sooner, if he'd been paying attention instead of basking in the spotlight, he could have saved him. Now he can't handle stimulation after midnight. It's when it happened, when he lost control. And you tell me this why?" Ruby asked quietly. "Because you should understand what you're dealing with." Grant's eyes glittered with malice. "Devon Pierce is broken. And broken things are dangerous." Before Ruby could respond, a tourist at a corner table raised their phone for a selfie. The flash exploded across the darkened room like lightning. Devon's reaction was immediate and visceral. His breath caught audibly. His hand shot to his chest. His eyes squeezed shut as if the light had physically burned him. For several seconds he stood frozen, trapped in a memory that only he could see. The entire staff held their breath. The unexpected response, Ruby didn't think. She moved on, instinct honed by years of caring for Jamie during panic attacks in hospital rooms. She grabbed a clean glass and filled it with warm water, adding a squeeze of fresh lemon and a thin slice of ginger, something grounding. Something with a scent that could anchor someone spiraling. She walked slowly across the bar, her footsteps deliberately soft. She didn't approach Devon directly. Instead, she placed the glass on a nearby table within his reach, then stepped back and turned away, giving him space and privacy. The simple act of not staring, of not demanding his attention or explanation, of offering help without making him feel weakened, cut through his panic more effectively than any words could have. Devon's breathing gradually slowed. His hand released the railing. His eyes opened and found the glass sitting exactly where he could reach it without effort. He lifted it with trembling fingers and took a slow sip. The warmth and the scent did their work. His shoulders gradually relaxed. The distant look in his eyes faded, replaced by sharp awareness. He glanced around the room until he found Ruby, who had returned to her station and was calmly polishing glasses, as if nothing had happened. For the second time that night, Devon Pierce stared at Ruby Santos. But this time, there was something new in his expression. Something vulnerable and confused and almost grateful. Natasha appeared beside Ruby, her voice barely audible. "What did you just do?" "Helped," Ruby said simply. No one helps him. People either run or freeze or try to fix him, and all of those make it worse. Natasha's expression was a mixture of shock and grudging respect. You just treated him like a person instead of a problem. "That's because he is a person," Ruby replied quietly. "A person in pain?" Across the room, Grant Walsh's face twisted with fury. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The new bartender was supposed to panic, to make things worse, to give Devon another reason to lose control. Instead, she'd somehow made things better. He would need to escalate his plans. Fragments of truth, the rest of the night passed in tense quiet. Devon disappeared into his private office around 1 a.m. The staff gradually relaxed like soldiers standing down from high alert. Ruby continued working, maintaining the precision and calm that had kept her alive through worse situations than this. At 2:30, during a lull in customers, Natasha approached with 2 cups of coffee. She set one in front of Ruby and leaned against the bar. 12 years, she said without preamble. "What? I've worked for Devon Pierce for 12 years. I've seen 100 people try to work here. Some lasted days. Most lasted hours. A few lasted weeks before the stress broke them." Natasha took a sip of coffee. "You're different. You see him, see someone hurting," Ruby said. "That's not special. That's just paying attention. You don't understand. Devon doesn't want to be seen. He built these walls, these rules, this entire protocol to keep people at a distance. He thinks if he controls everything, the lights, the sound, the movements, he can control the memories. He thinks if he makes himself cold enough, strict enough, impossible enough to work for, no one will get close enough to hurt him again." Ruby thought about Jamie lying in that hospital bed, trying to smile through the pain. Running from hurt doesn't make it stop. It just makes you tired. Natasha smiled sadly. "You really don't know who Devon Pierce is, do you? His worth, his power, the empire he built? I know he's a person who lost someone he loved. I know he blames himself. I know he's afraid it will happen again." Ruby met Natasha's eyes. "The rest is just noise." Before Natasha could respond, Devon emerged from his office. He walked directly to the bar, his movements controlled again, his armor back in place. But when he looked at Ruby, something in his expression had shifted. The cold assessment was gone, replaced by wary curiosity. "You worked a clean shift," he said. His voice was deep and quiet, each word chosen carefully. Efficient, professional, no mistakes. "Thank you, sir." "Don't call me sir. It's Devon." He paused, and Ruby could see him wrestling with words he wasn't accustomed to saying. "The water. With the lemon and ginger? That was ... thoughtful. My sibling has panic attacks sometimes. Small sensory details help more than big gestures." Devon studied her for a long moment. "You have someone you're taking care of." "Yes, that's why you're here. Why you need this job." Ruby held his gaze. "Yes." Something in Devon's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. Recognition, perhaps. The understanding that they were both people carrying weight too heavy to set down. He nodded once, then turned and walked back toward his office. But before he disappeared, he paused at the doorway. "Ruby," he said without turning around. "Tomorrow night? At the same time?" It wasn't a question. It was an invitation. Ruby felt something unfold in her chest: relief, exhaustion, and the dangerous flicker of hope. She had survived her first night. And somehow, impossibly, she had been asked to return. Grant Walsh watched this interaction from the shadows. His jaw clenched so tightly his teeth ached. Tomorrow night, he decided. Tomorrow, he would make his move. Tomorrow, he would ensure that Ruby Santos learned what happened to people who got too close to Devon Pierce. Tomorrow, everything would fall apart. Ruby's second night at Obsidian Heights began with a text that made her blood turn cold. Jamie's doctor, treatment complications. Need to move up surgery date? Estimated cost now $340,000. Please call to discuss payment options. She sat in the subway, staring at the number until her eyes burned. $340,000. She made $18,000 a year from all her jobs combined. Even working at Obsidian Heights for a year wouldn't cover it. The math didn't work. The hope didn't work. Nothing worked, but she showed up anyway, because not showing up meant Jamie would die. And Ruby had promised their mother she would never let that happen. When she stepped off the elevator, Natasha took one look at her face and pulled her aside. "What's wrong?" Ruby almost lied. But exhaustion and fear made her honest. "My sibling needs surgery. I can't afford it. I don't know what to do." Natasha's expression softened with sympathy. "How much?" "More than I'll ever have." For a moment, Natasha seemed to consider something, then shook her head. "Focus on tonight. One thing at a time. That's how you survive impossible situations." Ruby nodded and moved to her station. But her hands trembled as she arranged bottles. And her mind kept circling back to Jamie's pale face, the beeping monitors, the weight of failure pressing against her chest like concrete. She didn't notice Grant Walsh watching her distress with satisfaction. Desperate people made mistakes, and tonight he planned to ensure she made several. The setup the evening started smoothly. Ruby mixed drinks with mechanical precision, while her thoughts spiraled elsewhere. Devon arrived at his usual time, conducting his inspection with that same controlled intensity. When his gaze found Ruby, something shifted in his expression: concern, maybe. He could see she wasn't fully present. He approached the bar during a quiet moment. "You're distracted." Ruby forced a professional smile. "I'm fine." "You're lying." Devon's voice held no judgment, only observation. "Whatever is wrong, it's affecting your focus. That's dangerous in this environment." "I said I'm fine." Her tone came out sharper than intended. Devon's eyes narrowed slightly, but instead of anger, Ruby saw something unexpected. Unexpected understanding. "When I lost my partner, people kept telling me I was fine too. That I should move on, work harder, control everything better." He paused. "Being fine is exhausting." Ruby's throat tightened. She wanted to maintain her professional distance, but the kindness in his voice cracked something open inside her. "My sibling needs surgery. I can't afford it. I'm working for jobs and it's still not enough. I don't know how to save them." Devon absorbed this information in silence. Then he did something that surprised both of them. He pulled out his phone and began typing. "Give me your sibling's name and hospital." "What?" "No, I wasn't asking for her. I know you weren't." "I'm offering anyway." He looked up at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, his guard was completely down. "I couldn't save my partner, but maybe I can help you save yours." "Give me the information." Ruby stared at him, stunned. "Devon, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars." "I'm aware." "Give me the information." Something in his tone told her arguing would be pointless. With shaking hands, Ruby pulled out her phone and shared Jamie's hospital details. Devon made a call right there at the bar, authorizing payment for the surgery while Ruby stood frozen in disbelief. When he ended the call, he simply said, "It's done. Your sibling will get the treatment they need." Ruby couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process the enormity of what had just happened. "I can't ever repay you. I don't want repayment. I want you to understand that you're not alone." Devon's expression was raw and honest. No one should have to carry that weight by themselves. Before Ruby could respond, Grant Walsh's voice cut through the moment like a blade. How touching. The broken billionaire playing hero. He approached them with a smile that radiated malice. Tell me, Devon, does she know the truth? About how your partner really died? Devon's entire body went rigid. Leave. Now. Oh, I don't think so. I think it's time Ruby learned who she's really working for. Grant turned to Ruby. Devon's partner didn't just have a heart attack. He overdosed. On drugs Devon provided at that party, Devon thought it was harmless Funko, cane pills, party favors for his VIP guests. His partner took something without knowing what it was, and it killed him. Devon's not haunted by grief. He's haunted by guilt. Because it was his fault? The color drained from Devon's face. His breathing turned ragged. The room seemed to tilt and shimmer around him as the memory crashed through his defenses. The truth breaks free. Ruby looked between Grant's triumphant expression and Devon's collapsing composure. The bar had gone silent. Staff members stood frozen, witnessing something they'd never seen before. Devon Pierce completely losing control. That's not the whole truth, Ruby said quietly. Grant blinked. What? You're telling a story that makes Devon the villain because it serves whatever revenge fantasy you're living? Ruby's voice grew stronger. But trauma doesn't work that way. Guilt doesn't work that way. If Devon was just a careless rich man who didn't care, he wouldn't have spent years building these protocols to protect his staff. He wouldn't have this bar exist with safety measures no one else requires. He wouldn't be trying so hard to prevent what happened from ever happening again. Devon's eyes met hers, wide with shock and something that looked like hope. Did he make mistakes? Probably, Ruby continued. Was there negligence? Maybe. But I see someone who spent years punishing himself for not being able to stop something terrible. That's not cruelty. That's someone who cares too much, not too little. Grant's face twisted with rage. You stupid girl. You have no idea what you're talking about. You've been here 2 nights and you think you understand him? I understand pain, Ruby said simply. And I understand the difference between someone who doesn't care and someone who cares so much it's destroying them. The words hung in the air like a spell. Devon was staring at Ruby as if seeing her for the first time, truly seeing her, the way she had seen him from the beginning. Something in his expression cracked open. Years of armor splitting apart to reveal the wounded person underneath. Grant realized he was losing control of the situation. In desperation, he grabbed a champagne bottle and hurled it toward the sound system. The crash was explosive, glass shattering across the floor. The sudden noise like a gunshot in the quiet space. Devon's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. His hands flew to his ears. His eyes squeezed shut. His entire body began to shake as the panic attack hit full force, dragging him back to that night, the music, the lights, the chaos. The moment he realized his partner was dying and he was too late to help, Ruby moved without hesitation. She walked directly to Devon, ignoring the shattered glass crunching under her shoes. She didn't touch him. Touch could feel overwhelming during a panic attack. Instead, she positioned herself in his line of sight and spoke in a low, steady voice. Devon, listen to my voice. You're in Obsidian Heights. It's Saturday night. You're safe. Jamie is getting surgery because of you. You saved someone today. Devon's breathing was ragged, but his eyes opened, focusing on her face. You couldn't save your partner, Ruby continued softly. But you've spent years making sure no one else gets hurt the way he did. That matters. Your guilt doesn't erase your care. Your pain doesn't erase your kindness. Slowly, deliberately, she held out her hand, not demanding, just offering. An invitation, not a command. Devon stared at her hand for a long moment. Then, trembling, he reached out and took it. His grip was tight, desperate, the touch of someone who had been drowning and finally found something solid to hold on to. Breathe with me, Ruby whispered. In 4-4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. They breathed together while the bar stood witness. Staff members watched in stunned silence as Ruby Santos did what no one had ever done before. She reached Devon Pierce in the middle of his darkness and guided him back to the light. Grant Walsh realized his plan had backfired completely. Instead of destroying Devon's relationship with the new bartender, he had accidentally created something stronger. Security was already approaching him. Natasha had called them the moment he threw the bottle. Within minutes, Grant was escorted out of Obsidian Heights permanently, his revenge attempt ending in complete failure. 6 months later, Ruby stood behind the bar at Obsidian Heights, mixing a cocktail with practiced ease. But everything else had changed. The Twilight protocol still existed, but it was gentler now. Devon had started therapy, working through the trauma he'd buried under rules and control. The lights still dimmed at midnight, but now it was about creating atmosphere, not managing panic. The staff no longer moved in fear. They moved with respect for a boss who had learned to be human again. Jamie sat at the bar, looking healthy and strong, laughing at something Natasha said. The surgery had been successful. The treatments had worked. Ruby's sibling was going to live. Devon approached from his office, moving with a new ease in his movements. He still dressed immaculately, still ran his business with precision. But the cold armor had been replaced with something warmer. When he reached Ruby, he slipped an arm around her waist, a casual intimacy that would have been impossible 6 months ago. "How's the new cocktail coming?" he asked. "Almost perfect. Want to taste?" Ruby held up a spoon with a small sample. Devon tasted it and smiled. "You could add a whisper of cardamom. It would complement the ginger." "That's exactly what I was thinking." Ruby added the spice while Devon watched with affection. Mr. Chen approached the bar, raising his glass in salute. "To the girl who wouldn't run, you broke the curse, my dear." Ruby smiled. "I just saw a person who needed help." "No," Devon said quietly, turning her to face him. "You saw me when I couldn't see myself. That's different. That's everything." He kissed her softly while the bar hummed with life around them. The city glittered through the windows, and Obsidian Heights felt less like a fortress and more like a home. Ruby had come here desperate and afraid, certain she would fail. Instead, she had found something she'd never expected. Not just a job, not just salvation for Jamie, but a place where her compassion mattered. Where seeing pain as pain instead of weakness was a strength. And Devon had found something too. He'd spent years believing he was too broken to be loved, too guilty to deserve happiness. Ruby had shown him that healing wasn't about forgetting or controlling everything. It was about letting someone see your scars and choosing to trust them anyway. The legend of Obsidian Heights had ended the night Ruby Santos refused to run. What began in its place was something better, a story about two people who found each other in the darkness and decided to walk toward the light together. No one ever lasted a night with Devon Pierce, until Ruby Santos lasted forever.